Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And I've got a knife here that I was aware of and kind of looked at and thought about, but never pulled the trigger until I found this one for a really good price. I believe on Amazon.com, but I could be wrong. It might have been eBay. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. These are a fairly budget-friendly EDC knife. This is the Kershaw Blur. And I picked this one up, I think for, I don't know, less than $50 Canadian, which is a good price. And I was, I just thought, hey, let's just try it out. I don't have a Blur. I've heard a lot about it. Well, it's no wonder why this knife is so popular, why there are so many videos about it, why, Kershaw. And to me, this is the quintessential Kershaw. This is kind of Kershaw's go-to knife. It is, it is the tenacious of Kershaw. It is the griptilian of Kershaw. It's that one knife that really stands out from this maker. And I'm sure a good portion of Kershaw's folding knife sales come from this particular blade. Not this exact variation of it, but from Blur sales. Okay, this is truly a great knife. And in fact, it is the only knife that I like enough that I bought a second one. This one came from Kershaw guy. I think he's the only one that has these left. Blade HQ might have them as well, but this is the blue anodized aluminum with silver twill G10 and S30v blade steel. This knife is a little different. As we go through this video, I'm going to warn you, I will be talking primarily about this knife. This is one I got lots of experience with. This one I haven't used much because I'd kind of like to keep it in good condition. Still a great blade. It'll be like a light user for me, and this one will be the more often used, heavier used option. Okay, now I'm going to tell you this as we go through the video. I will be talking about this knife, but I'll probably be showing you this one a lot just because it looks really, really cool. Okay, so just a heads up, I'll be talking about this knife, but I'll be thinking of this one. Also notice the difference in the blade grind. This is a high flat grind. This is sort of a medium deep hollow grind. That I'm going to talk about primarily the hollow grind blade, okay? And that's the standard blade shape. It's not, this is a special blade grind for this particular edition of the Blur, okay? So, let's get into size and weight, and now I'm just doing the opposite of what I said, so I'll switch here as soon as I get zoomed in. But for size and weight, there you go. This guy is 3.5 inch blade, and it's just under 3.5 inches, okay? And a 4.5 inch handle. Now let me just switch these out so you can look at the cool one. The slightly less than 3.5 inch blade ends up making this slightly less than an 8 inch knife. So it's basically 7 7/8, and that's because the blade is about 1/8 inch short of 3.5 inches. The handle is of course 4.5 inches then, and the weight on this is a very good 3.9 ounces, and that's excellent for a folding knife you're going to carry in your pocket all the time. You can't be anything around 4 ounces is going to feel very, very comfortable. Okay, it's only once you get above 5 ounces that you're going to even really notice, I would say. So that's the size and weight. Basically 8 inches, 3.5 inches, and 4.5 inches, and 3.9 ounces. So size and weight is very, very good, and that's one of the things that I think the Blur gets right. Moving on to the blade, I'm going to come back to this knife because this is more of a standard issue Blur. The blade is 3.5 inches of 14 C28N blade steel, and that blade steel is amazing. I did a bunch of cutting with this knife along with a few others and found this almost performed as well as S30v. It wasn't quite there, but it was close, and it certainly far outpaced AUS 8 and certainly ACF 13 MOV and all of those sort of Chinese steels. This is a very, very good blade steel, and it's too bad that it's proprietary to Kershaw because I would like to see this steel on a lot of different blades. It's a really, really good steel, and this thing has held an edge for me like you wouldn't believe, and it's not that bad to sharpen. It's just exactly what you want from blade steel. Maybe we could qualify that by saying from a budget blade steel. Are you going to see some benefit by stepping up to the S30v? Yeah, a little bit. However, these two knives, notice this has the flat ground blade and of course a stonewash finish. They're both drop point, recurve, but this is a fairly high flat grind, and this is a more of a medium hollow grind, and it is a deep hollow grind. And that blade shape, as I've said before, makes for very good slicing because there's very little material behind the cutting edge. This is still going to work well, especially because it's a high flat grind. A high flat grind is still a pretty capable cutting, slicing blade, but I found this blade performed exceptionally well. And I have got to say that I have a ton of experience with this blade, only a little with this one, okay? But back to the 14C28N, great steel, highly recommend it. There's a few other, I think the Camber and the Knockout and a few other Kershaws available now have it, and it is a great steel. I'm almost tempted to pick those up just because they have this steel. It's excellent. So that's the blade shape. Very good performer. It is a recurve. I know some people don't like recurves because of sharpening. I find, now I use a rod sharpener, so I know I'm not using stones and I'm not that much of a purist, but I love recurve blades. I have no problem sharpening them. In fact, I really like rod sharpeners. I have some stones and I've used them, and I do use them from time to time, but I actually prefer the rod sharpening. I use the Lansky one a lot, but the Sharpmaker, stuff like that, I really, really like them. Okay, recurves are great because they put a lot of cutting power into the front of this knife. So as you do sort of a draw cut like this, you are kind of forcing the material into the blade, and it just works really, really well. All right, so great blade shape, really, really performs well at EDC tasks. This one does too. I've done about a bit of cutting with it, not as much as this one, but it's not like I cut with this one and like, whoa, it cuts terrible. It still cuts really well, but this one cuts exceptionally well. Okay, let's carry on and get into deployment and lockup. I love the Speedsafe. I'm going to switch these knives around so that you can kind of watch the cooler knife while the video is going on. I love the Speedsafe, and here's all that Speedsafe means. It means when you go to close the knife, all of this has no spring tension. Okay, so the spring is not pushing on the blade, not pushing on the blade, not pushing on the blade until right there. Now I can start to feel the spring, and watch. If I let go, you can see the spring come into action. And so that's how the Speedsafe works. You get to about this point, maybe just a little past that, and if I kind of let my fingers out of the way, that blade's going to shoot out. Okay, so it's assisted, still works extremely well, but it makes one-hand operation way, way easier by making it so that all of this distance you can close the knife. If you remember the SOG Aegis, it's a little harder to close. You've got to kind of do some fancy finger work to get the blade to close because it's always under tension. The same is true of my Benchmade Barrage, and I do plan to do a video where I compare all of the assisted opening knives, but the Speedsafe is very, very comfortable because of the ability to close it most of the way before the spring tension kicks in. Okay, so that's how the Speedsafe works. It's extremely good. I really like the Speedsafe technology. And I want to make a little note here very quickly. Assisted opening knives are not bad. I know a lot of guys, kind of complain about it, and they say, hey, I think you should de-assist every knife. And a lot of Blurs are de-assisted, a lot of 0350s are de-assisted, a lot of different, even a lot of 0300s, which takes some actual mechanical changes to the knife, do get de-assisted. And I don't see why. The assisted opening knife feature, yeah, it's not necessary, but it is kind of cool. And if you're watching this and thinking about a knife, don't let the fact that some YouTuber doesn't like an assisted opening knife put you off. It may be a great knife for you, and you may totally love it even though it's assisted. And certainly, although most of my knives are not assisted, I really like the knives that I have that are assisted, including this one. Okay, now I want to speak to lockup just a little bit. The lockup is achieved through a lock bar that's inserted into the aluminum handle, and the lockup on mine is very good. Now, oh, by the way, centering is only so-so. Most blurs, you know, the centering is not perfect. You could mess with the pivot screw if you wanted to, or the handle to try and get it right. But as long as it's not rubbing, I don't really care. Lockup though, there are a couple of videos out there on the interwebs that talk about Kershaw Blur lock failure. I think primarily that's a function of just the sheer number of blurs that have been sold. Okay, you know, if 1 in 10,000 fails, well, there are enough blurs out there that there are hundreds of failures, okay? That's just the way it happens with a very successful product. If there's one minor defect, it's going to become more evident in an extremely popular product because, you know, as I said, if there's 1 in 10,000 and you sell 100,000, well, that means you've got 10 defective units out there. And if you sell 1 million or 2 million, now think of the numbers involved. So you're going to have some knives that aren't working. Kershaw's warranty is excellent, and if you have a lockup failure, use their warranty program. It's very good. Now, because of those videos, I will say that I went ahead and, by the way I do this, I take a towel or something soft, put it on a hard surface. I've done some spine wax, I've done some overstrikes this way. I've even done the thing, you know, tried to pinch these closed this way and had nothing but total success out of these locks. I have not been able to get one of these to fail at all, okay? And so, again, I don't think that's something that should put you off from buying the knife. Yeah, sure, if you get a really popular knife, there's going to be some failures out there, especially with a frame lock or a liner lock. They can fail. Something like an axis lock or a compression lock, you know, the handle almost has to break in half for those locks to fail, where because of the geometry of the two interfacing metals, they could slide apart in a frame lock or a liner lock, okay? So I've done some testing, and maybe you'll want to do that on your blur just to build your own confidence in your blade. But I've had no problems with lockup at all. Let's talk about the handle, and for this I'm going to point out one thing about this, and then I'm going to switch back. This is Silver Twill G10. It is not terribly grippy. The jimping on the back here is not terribly grippy either. However, on the standard blur, there's the Grip Tech, or the Tech, what do you call this stuff? Track Tech, there we go. Track Tech inserts, they are very grippy, very comfortable, very rubbery, very almost sticky feeling, and they do give you a very good grip. Most of the time, I think for the tasks the blur is designed for, you're not going to need that kind of grip. You know, if you're going into a combat situation, the blur is probably not the knife to take because, yeah, there is a slight chance that your fingers could slide up onto the blade. But for most of us, that's not an issue. If you need a combat knife, maybe this is more the Kershaw for you. But I've found them very grippy, very comfortable, very ergonomic, okay? One complaint I have as we talk about the handle is the pocket clip. This pocket clip, as you try to put it in pocket, tends to kind of get hung up about here. Okay, so you don't get the full depth that you could potentially get with this pocket clip, and so it rides a little higher than it needs to. It doesn't have to. If you kind of stop what you're doing and push it down into your pocket, it will go in. It's just that it tends to get caught up somewhere around here, just because there's not a lot of space here, okay? So the only thing that I really complain about is the pocket clip, and for me, you know, it functions, and that's definitely not a deal breaker. I actually really love this knife. I may have, at some point in the future, switch this pocket clip out for one that carries a little deeper though, okay? Overall, this is a fantastic knife. I love, you know, sitting at my desk and flipping these things open and closed while I'm reading a book or writing or, you know, listening to something that I need to do for work. I love cutting with them. They've performed extremely well. They carry really well. And it's no wonder that this knife is as popular as it is. My understanding is that the Kershaw Blur is one of the most collected knives, and even I have two of them, and I don't have two of any knife, okay? These things are just really, really cool. I'm a big fan of the Kershaw Blur, and I wasn't before. When I first saw the Blur, I was sort of like, it's okay. Once I got one in hand and once I started using it and played with that speed assist, man, Speedsafe I should say, I really, really love this knife, and I love having these in my collection. Tons of, pride of ownership and cool factor here. Just a great blade. Highly, highly recommend it. All right, and by the way, remember that steel, that 14C28N is great steel too. There you go. That's my take on the Kershaw Blur. Very much a new favorite of mine, and we'll talk to you later.